It's a graduation ceremony!
Hello honeys, I've collected all 15 cords featured in the Aikatsu Starway to the Future movie and I put them all together for you. Enjoy! 15 Magical Green. Magical Green's placement at the bottom is a little unfair. It's honestly not a bad design. I'm just not a big fan of this shade of green and it really distracts me from enjoying all the cute details. I love the shimmery accent fabric in particular. This cord also does a great job of balancing elegant jewelry with more playful elements like the graphic smiley face print. 14 Sunrise Starway. Next is Sunrise Starway, and here's where the ranking gets controversial. The vast majority of you thought that the Starway cords would be at the top of my list, so let me explain. Their low placement mostly comes down to the ball gown silhouettes and the metallic wings. I'm pretty open about not liking the heaviness of ball gown dresses for Aikatsu, and the complicated layering of these doesn't win me over. I also don't think the wings match the design of the cords, the metallic texture isn't used anywhere else in the dresses, and I would have preferred if they chose either silver or gold for them. Then there's the heavy use of multicolored gemstone accents that, in my opinion, don't fit into the overall color palette. For me, the color palette is weakest in Sunrise Starway. 13 Sunset Starway. Sunset Starway is a little higher because the red, purple, and yellow palette has a more subtle level of contrast. The mid-length gloves also do a better job of capturing the regal theme of the dress. The bodice has less of those multicolored gemstones, so that helps the design feel a little more elegant too. 12 Sunshine Starway. Sunshine Starway is the highest, again because of the color palette. The pink and gold have the most subtle contrast that makes them the easiest on the eyes. For my personal taste, it's unfortunate that they also include light green in the underside of the skirt and the ribbon at the back, but at least those don't show up in most shots. Those gemstones I don't like do have a strong presence in the neckline, but they're balanced by the fact that I like the full-length gloves. If you love these dresses, that's awesome. They just fall pretty far outside of my subjective preferences for Aikatsu cords. 11 Cosmos Heartful Story. In comparison, I welcome the simplicity of Cosmos Heartful Story. It is pretty far down still because of how little texture variation there is in this design, but at least it's more streamlined. The feather concept has been executed in a pretty unique way to create lots of interesting shapes. I especially like the dramatic flare of the detached feather sleeves. The monochromatic palette is nice, but in this case I think they could have used a little more of that blue accent color we see in the gemstone appliques. 10 Cosmos Crown Story. Cosmos Crown Story is a bit more interesting. There's the asymmetrical bodice with the sash creating extra diagonal movement, then there's the big red flower on the back adding a pop of hue contrast, and you also have a subtle leg cuff to balance the asymmetry in the top of the dress. The darker blue layer in the skirt is also just a little darker to create a stronger value contrast than what we see in Cosmos Heartful Story. It still lacks the texture variation I'm looking for, but it's cute. 9 Magical Emerald. The texture variation comes through in the magical cords. Magical Emerald has a good mix of matte sections, gradients, and sparkles. The overall silhouette is fairly basic, but the cut of each piece is full of interesting lines and details. I'm not super into the dark stockings because they pull the eye away from the top and bottom pieces, but this is a highly polished design. 8 Magical Navy. Magical Navy is also on the lower end of my preferences because of the dark stockings. The red gemstone accents work well with the navy base colors to create the intended gothic impression. Purple is also integrated really successfully into all three textures, matte in the sleeve cuffs, sparkly in the bodice and skirt, and a gradient in the trim for both pieces. 7 Magical Yellow. For Magical Yellow, I'm happy with the way red and green were added to the gradient accents to spice up the otherwise monochromatic yellow palette. The red creates a much richer orange, and the green is used just sparingly enough that it complements the other hues rather than distracting from them. 6 Magical Garden. The pink and green contrast is even better in Magical Garden. The green is bright without being too saturated, and the hints of blue and yellow in the gradient trim help tie it in a little more. That also helps the overall harmony with the gold accents too. 5 Magical Purple. Magical Purple is pretty monochromatic, but it still gets in plenty of value and hue contrast through all the different textures. Purple is also the complementary color for the gold accent color and the jewelry, trim, and patterns throughout each piece, so that contrast works the best out of all the magical cords. 4 Lilac Illuminate. I assumed that the Illuminate cords would be my least favorite, but when I look closely they really surprised me. I've criticized Luminous's prism cords pretty heavily, but I think these dresses solve the problems I had with them. They use the same geometric print, but much more sparingly so it isn't overwhelming. There's also just a hint of crystal gradient texture in the skirt, but I don't mind that it's been isolated there. I appreciate the subtlety of the white and silver base colors, and Lilac Illuminate is only the lowest because it has my least favorite bodice design. Overall, it's still very pretty to me. 3. Margaret Illuminate. Margaret Illuminate particularly surprised me, because the asymmetrical sleeves have so much personality, but I barely noticed how different each side was. I was focused on the big flared ruffles, but a whole sleeve is missing. That shows that the whole cord is very thoughtfully balanced. I love the visual rhythm created by all the ruffles on the top. They match the draping on the skirt very well. 2. Armeria Illuminate. Armeria Illuminate is a less experimental design, but I like the bodice design just a little bit more. There is still a bit of asymmetry between the arm jewelry and the stockings to appreciate, but pulling the mint color from the ruffle trim up into the halter neckline works well for me. I also generally like the combination of pink, white, and blue, so the color palette is also strongest in the skirt for me. The textures can look a bit messy, but I really appreciate the use of a white base color to provide plenty of resting points for the eye. 1. Strawberry World. As far as I can tell, Ichigo's Strawberry World concert dress was never released as an official cord, so you can disregard it if you want. But it's too perfect for me to ignore. I adore this color palette and these subtle references to Soleil's unit cords in the bodice. The visual rhythm of the sleeves and ruffled gloves is also very satisfying. We don't get a good view of the skirt, but I appreciate that the layers are kept on the simpler side while incorporating large trailing sections at the back. There are even wings on the shoes. It's been perfectly designed for this flying sequence. Let me know your favorite Starway to the Future cords in the comments below, and look out for my transformation pose ranking next week. Bye bye!
Flash!